What's up, Joelle? It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you.
Awesome. I know we're going to be talking a lot about blood flow restriction, but before we even get started, do you mind just taking a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, letting us know about your background? I used to never do intros, and then people started shitting on me on YouTube. They're like, "Why should we listen to your guest? You never let them introduce themselves." And I was like, "All right, I guess it makes sense." So,
Oh, that's so I have
spotlight.
heard that YouTube is relentless in terms of their
Yeah,
comments and critiques. I stay
yeah.
off of YouTube.
It was mainly with our mutual friend Adrian Chavez. We did
Okay.
the podcast together, and
Who's this guy?
yeah, well, he introduced himself on the first episode. He's been on 5 times, and then it was like, what's the point? And then people were like, why should I listen to him? Who is he? And I'm like, all right, whatever. I guess it makes sense. So go ahead,
That's
spotlight
so
is yours.
funny.
Who is Joelle?
Yeah, so I am Joelle Cavagnaro. I have a master's degree in exercise science, pre and postnatal cert. I am a mom of two littles, surviving the two under two situation. Now we're not. Now we're just one of them is under two, but for a while we were in the trenches of two under two. So I'm slowly coming out of that, and I own a health and fitness coaching company called Levolution Coaching. We're a team of registered dietitians, exercise physiologists, pre and postnatal coaches, and so on. To give some brief-ish background, my own journey started, really in college. Health and fitness journey started in college. I was overly ambitious and gained the freshman 30. I said freshman 15, who? Put on about 30 pounds my freshman year and was like, oh, my pants don't fit. I think I want to do something about this. And that is actually what kind of kickstarted my health and fitness journey. And I ended up swinging real hard in the other direction. Like went into dieting, wanted to be a bodybuilder, and then landed myself in a little orthorexic chapter for a while of just this obsession, right, with clean eating and over exercising. And so then it was kind of my recovery out of that. And then it was, amenorrhea from years of dieting and no cycle, and then trying to get my menstrual cycle back and trying to get pregnant. And we've been through a lot of different phases of health and fitness over the years, but I think that it has allowed me to speak to a variety of different topics, whether it's food fears or eating disorders or the bodybuilding space. And so anyway, I was in college amongst all of that craziness, or most of it. And I was going to school for health and PE at the time. I wanted to be a health and phys ed teacher, and I did do that for a few years. But while I was doing my health and PE degrees, I took an undergrad anatomy and physiology class. And the whole class failed the class except for me. I got an A. And I was like, oh, I love this. The human body is fascinating to me. And so I loved that. And then I had to take an undergrad exercise science class. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, how do I just do more of this? And I loved that class and I learned so much. And it was also really helpful for me at the time because just kind of being in that eating disorder space and then actually learning about what the research said and how to interpret exercise science research. That really is what inspired me to then do a master's in ex-phys. And so here we are. I would like to say that the internet, and for some timeline here, this is like 2011, 2012-ish, that I was in undergrad, 2014, 2015 when I was in grad school. But at the time, Instagram was just becoming a thing, and like fitness Instagram was just becoming a thing. And Pinterest was huge at the time. Like you were pinning these girls with abs up onto your Pinterest boards and like trying to look like these, shredded girls. And I was just like, yeah, the skinnier I get, the more, shredded I will be. I got leaner and leaner and leaner, but wasn't putting on any muscle.
Yeah.
It's been a journey the last decade or so. But I like to say that misinformation on the internet really did me dirty and steered me down a really dark path. And that's kind of how my Instagram was born, just starting to share more and more myth busting and evidence-based, information and protocols about what I was learning in school and what I was learning from my graduate work. And, then began coaching and what I was learning from coaching and seeing with clients and It was really the misinformation as a whole, which I think is probably far worse now than it even was then. But trying to combat that misinformation is really how I got started working in the industry.
Yeah, and your content is absolutely fantastic. For those of you guys
Thanks.
listening, if you don't follow Joelle, definitely go give her a follow. She has great educational content. Like I truly mean it. And
Thank you.
Bernardo, who is my business partner, is a huge fan of your page as
I
well.
love him.
Because him and I have had brainstorming sessions like, what do we want to do with content? What direction do we want to go in? And he's like, dude, like Joelle's content's great. Like we should.
Oh, I
So
love
just in
that.
case, yeah,
Thanks,
totally
Bernardo.
well deserved because your stuff really is fantastic. I know we're supposed to talk about blood flow restriction, but you just mentioned so much stuff that I want to dig into. Like
Yeah,
I don't know
sure.
about you, but I kind of want to just go into some of those things. If we get to talk about some blood flow restriction, that'd
Cool.
be great. If not, we could do it for another episode.
Yeah, let's do
But
it.
I wanted to bring up this concept, Joel, because it's so common. You mentioned you went through all of these different phases
Mm,
throughout your fitness journey. I
yeah.
don't like that phrase, but
I
I don't know what else to
I know.
use.
What else are you gonna call it?
Yeah. Um, where you perhaps, became obsessed with health and fitness a little bit too much,
Mm.
had issues with body image, had issues with your relationship with food. You were on one extreme, right? Gained 30 pounds during your freshman year. You were a hard worker.
Yes, worked
um,
very hard at the school's
yeah,
dining halls.
yeah. And then experienced the complete opposite extreme. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that not just yourself, but so many people go through those
Yep.
experiences. But I've realized that most of us who are professionals in this field have had most of those experiences, and it
Yeah.
almost feels like this might be a controversial thought, but you have to go through some of those experiences to have a much healthier relationship with this whole health and fitness thing long term as well. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on
I completely agree. And the more coaches I talk to, the more, I've even talked to like Dr. Joe Zundell about this, who you probably
that?
know. And, he shared something similar. Like, yeah, we started talking about backgrounds together and it was the same thing. Like I had this eating disorder experience too. And I think so many of the people that are our peers in the space have had some of those more extreme stances or like dogmatic points of views on their health and fitness at a certain point. And I think that's what happens. Like the pendulum swings one way, the pendulum swings the other way, and then you hope to land somewhere in the middle. And so I think that something that's unique about, your content, my content, is that we take this really nuanced and balanced approach to health and fitness because we've seen the other side and the damage that it can do to be on one extreme side.
Yeah, and I'm sure similarly to myself, like your goal when you work with a client is to help them avoid some of those extremes.
Yep.
Yeah. But unfortunately, a lot of people have already experienced some of those extremes.
Mm,
And those that haven't, it's hard to convince them with just information as well that those extremes aren't necessary.
yep.
Right? Because I have conversations with clients all the time where they're like, actually, one funny conversation was with somebody who was fairly new to the whole fitness thing. They hired a coach, they hired us, they were doing really well. And they asked me the question of, well, when does this get harder? Right? Because they were making really good progress. They were down 10 or 15 pounds. They were getting stronger. And they're like, this feels too easy. Like, when does it get harder? Like, why would you want it to get
Yeah.
any
Why do
harder?
you want it to be
Yeah.
harder?
But people feel like fitness needs to be extreme. It's kind of
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah. I think people think it has to be hard and it has to be grueling and you have to be miserable because that's what we've learned about dieting. And that's what we've learned about exercise and fitness, that it is equated to like misery and starvation. And like, there's a better way. We know there's a better way. It's not sexy to be preaching the better way though. You're like, hey, you could come diet and don't worry, you're not going to need to cut out any of your favorite foods and you're not going to need to do 2 hours of cardio. But then you have this group of people who are like, oh, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you and I both know it's not that it doesn't work. It's just the consistency piece that is what's
Yes.
missing, right? Because most people are like, I've tried everything. It's like, yeah, you've tried everything, but for how long?
And
Right?
you've tried everything except doing the things that would get you progress in the long term. Yeah, I
But
like to
even,
say if you can't do it forever, don't start it. So
yeah.
anytime, that's like my golden rule. If someone asks me about a specific diet or a specific style of exercise, if you don't think you could do it forever, because how often do we hear something like, well, I'm just going to do keto for the summer to lose weight for the summer. I'm just going to do this diet for this amount of time. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you do it for longer than that? well, I can't do that. I can't do that for longer. I was like, if you can't do that for an extended period of time, then you already just told me that that is not a good sustainable solution for you. And short-term habits are going to get short-term results. Long-term habits are going to get long-term results.
Yeah. Yeah. So many things to talk about here. I had done this masterclass where I talked about like the two big reasons why I think people fail to improve health and fitness long term. One being like they just don't have the right strategy,
Mm,
which is what most people think they need, right? It's like, hey, I need a better diet or a better workout plan. And for a lot of people, that is a factor, right? Because the things they've been doing aren't the most effective things. But the second piece is learning how to do things sustainably long term, right? Because nobody thinks about doing something forever. And inherently, they're like, I'm going on a diet.
right.
And like, say, even the phrase, I'm going on a diet inherently means that you're going to stop at a certain point. And nobody thinks about the diet after the diet, right? And the truth is that the only people that need to go on a diet that is temporary and it's not long term is a competitive athlete in the fitness space, right?
Yep.
Like I similarly to yourself always say like if you can't do it forever, don't do it for a day type of thing. And I've made content around this, and people will inherently comment stuff like that's not true because if you're trying to cut or this or that. But the majority of people in the U.S. we're just looking to lose some body fat, to be a little bit healthier, to look a little bit better, to feel more energized. The thing is like they're getting information from the fitness space, and fitness information isn't really what they need. They need
Yep.
health related information. And if you just work on improving your habits, you'll see tremendous results, and you should just stick with that long term. Like usually what I tell clients, like whatever you do to lose weight, there should be no difference in terms of what you do to maintain weight.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're on the same line of thinking there.
Yeah, there's two things that you mentioned that I want to come back to. One is an exit strategy because it makes me think a lot about like eating disorder Joelle. Because when I mentioned before, the pendulum kind of swung, right? Like I gained weight and then I wanted to start losing weight and I started, going to my school's weight room and exercising more and doing more cardio. And you take a 19-year-old kid who's like, how to get abs for summer on Google, and it's like, don't eat carbs, don't eat fat, don't eat salt, don't eat this. Carrots have too many carbs, don't have carrots. And I so vividly remember, and if any of my followers are listening to this, they know that I've told this story a million times, but I vividly remember eating baby carrots in my dorm room and then doing jumping jacks after to burn off the baby carrots. That's how delusional I was. But at that time, I wasn't aware of an exit strategy. Like I started to lose weight until I was well below what I even started at. I had a very, very long food fear list, and I pretty much eliminated anything that wasn't protein because protein was like the one thing I wasn't scared of. Eating cans of dry tuna, just anyway. And so I wanted to come back to exit strategy because I think that is a really missed component. And we know that weight rebound rates or weight regain rates are very high. And I think for a lot of people, it's because they don't know what the exit strategy is. And the hope with coaching in both of our businesses is that we can teach you how to maintain the current habits you're doing so that there's no like, oh, I can't wait to finish my coaching and eat a cupcake again. Or like, I can't wait to finish my coaching and not go to the gym anymore. The goal is that we can teach you how to do things sustainably, because a long time ago, people weren't talking about maintenance phases or reverse diets or, the importance of not taking your calories too low. It was just, yeah, you want to be lean, you just diet. You just diet.
Yeah.
And I just stayed dieting. Like I was 19, 20 years old. I just stayed dieting, and it got worse and worse and worse because I didn't have an exit strategy.
Yeah. So what sort of approach do you guys take when you work with a new client? Let's say they don't really have any healthy nutritional or lifestyle related habits, and how do you guys help set them up for long-term success?
Yeah, so a few things. Something that we like to do before people kind of come into their coaching process is have them track for a few days just what they're currently eating. That way the coach can kind of see like, what does fruit and vegetable intake look like? What does protein intake look like? How much are we eating? How often? How regularly are we skipping meals? And really start with the basics. And I think, a lot of people come in and they're like, I need the perfect workout plan and the perfect set of macros, and that is going to be the key to all my problems. And they like to say like, I'm not a macro calculator. Like, I'm not a macro calculating service. Our business is not a macro calculating service. Many of our
Yeah.
clients do track macros. Not everyone. Depends on the person, the stage of life they're in, what they feel like they have the capacity for, their relationship with food. For a lot of people, tracking in some capacity, even if it's just protein and calories instead of carbs, fats, and protein and whatever, tracking in some capacity can be a really great tool, but not for everyone and not in every season or chapter of life. So, some of the things that we like to do is take a really big picture approach. First and foremost, when we come in and, we get someone's onboarding documents, we do like a goal mapping call with them to go through what is the goal, what is the timeline that we have together, and what does progress look like to you? Because sometimes our idea of progress as a coach is so much different than the idea of what a client perceives their progress to be.
Mhm.
Think of the person who comes in and they're like, I want to lose 30 pounds. And you kind of start to dive deeper into that. And you're like, is it the 30 pounds? Like, a lot of people come in with a scale weight in mind. I want to be 140 pounds. Okay,
Yeah.
what would that mean for you? Like, what does being 140 mean for you? Well, I just know I'll like my body at that weight. And so a lot of people, as you know, sometimes get to a goal weight and they're like, this is not what I thought it would look like.
Yeah.
Or I still want to look like this person. And you're like, well, that picture of the person you're showing me has 30 pounds more muscle than you. So, like, getting leaner, yes, we'll take off some of the body fat, but if we don't have the muscle density, we're not going to look like that. So I think, really being able to figure out what the goal is of the client and how we can get them from point A to point B in a way that is evidence-based, of course, but sustainable for the client, and focusing on exercise that they enjoy and a way of eating that they enjoy. And then focusing on some of those the big rocks, really, like moving more. If we're sedentary, can we add a walk in? If we're not having anywhere near the amount of protein that we're having, can we increase the portion sizes of those protein? Can we add more color into our day? And I'm curious if you feel the same. We really try to focus on things you can add, because I think a lot
Mhm.
of people get so hyper focused on, coming into coaching, and they think we're going to take everything away from them. We're going to take away all of your favorite things and all of your favorite foods. And it's like, no, no, no. We want to add.
Yeah.
We want to change the way that you think about dieting or the way that you think about health and fitness and exercise, because we just want to add. Where can we add color? Where can we add protein? Where can we add fiber, instead of where can we take all these things away?
Yeah, 100%. We actually have uh, a set of what we call like perspective shifting frameworks of what people think nutrition and fitness is about and like why it's actually wrong. And one of them is you shouldn't approach nutrition from the perspective of what not to eat. You should approach
Yes.
nutrition from the perspective of what to eat, right?
Yep.
And in terms of like, that question that I asked of like, how do you develop these sustainable habits? One thing that we've done with this concept is we don't tell any of our clients you can't eat this or you can't
Right.
eat that. We
Yep.
do have some behaviors around like reducing added sugars or highly processed foods and stuff like that, but we developed what we call our foundational phase. And this came because when we first started coaching, um, we really just focused a ton on calories and macros, and that was kind of it. That was from inexperience because
Mm.
my experience has always been like in the fitness space, like I want to lose weight, I'll just track my calories. Hey,
Right.
everybody can just track their calories, and it's a very useful tool for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But over time, our niche also changed, or mine personally, from working with people who care more about fitness to just like general health because I enjoy working with that type of person more. And I really enjoy seeing somebody going from like unhealthy and overweight and not energetic and being in pain to like feeling really good.
Yeah.
That feels better than somebody who's like, I want to step on stage and be ripped, right? It's like
Right.
a
I want to
different
just be
level of
shredded.
fulfillment. Yeah, for
Yeah.
me personally, at least. So Bernardo and I, when we sat together, we're like, all right, what do these types of people really need?
Mm.
And we identified like essentially 10 healthy habits around nutrition and lifestyle. And anybody who starts with us from scratch has to go through this foundational
I love that.
phase. And we've had this conversation a lot because we're like, well, what if somebody like doesn't want to go through it? And we're like, well, then they have to prove
Have
that they're
to.
doing
It's
these
the
habits.
baseline. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to. I like that.
And so it's literally protein, a fiber target, letting us know what your eating schedule is going to be like, a fruit and vegetable target, a daily step goal. And we go week by week through each of these until they develop the healthy habits. And then we introduce calorie tracking afterward. And the funny thing is that a lot of the people who have some hesitation towards that method or like, I really want to track calories because I've done it before, but maybe they've, even though they track calories or yo-yo dieting, they can't stick to it. their resistance is like, I want to track calories because I want to lose weight. And the funny thing is, when we convince them not to and go through the foundational phase, they lose weight as a byproduct anyways,
Mm-hmm.
because we know that it's about the behaviors, not necessarily tracking itself, that causes weight
Right.
loss. So that's the general approach that we take there.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the other really key components is the idea around like cognitive dietary restraint, where you have this mindset of restricting food to lose or maintain weight, like the no no no, I can't have that, I'm on a diet. And it's not even about how much someone is eating, it's their perception about thinking that they're dieting, and that can have really detrimental effects to someone's actual ability to stick to that diet or to make progress. And so we know from research about cognitive dietary restraint that the less someone feels like, in quotes
Yeah.
here, that they're on a diet, the more they'll typically succeed with their diet. And so the goal really is to be able to engage in a dieting phase in a healthy way without feeling too restricted.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny the term diet, because I don't think I ever even tell clients like, all right, now we're dieting
Yeah.
at all. My whole perspective and the language that I always use is, we're working on improving the quality of your nutrition, right? Or the quality of your
Yeah.
diet, so that you can not just lose weight, but get into the body composition that you want and maintain that long term. Like, this isn't a short term thing. We're just going to be doing this forever, ideally,
Yeah.
right? And talking about uh, cognitive bias and lower risk of success when it comes to weight loss, especially if you think you're dieting and you think you have to eliminate all these things. I can't tell you how many times, Joel, and you probably have had a similar experience, where I work with clients who like are really having a hard time sticking to their caloric target,
Mm.
right? And no matter how many conversations we have about this, they're like, no, but I really want to diet. I really want to do this. I really want to lose the weight. Uh, but they're not seeing much progress, right? And I've had this conversation. I can think about a handful of clients, 4 or 5 now, where it's been the same exact experience, where I'm like, let's at least take a month to not track calories.
Yep.
And let's just focus on these 3 things. Well, I mean, 4 things really. I'm not going to count training as a habit because we're always training, but let's focus on training. Let's focus on hitting our daily steps. Let's focus on hitting our protein goal. And let's focus on hitting a fruit and vegetable goal. Uh, and I also ask clients to submit pictures of like their eating with
Their
check-ins and stuff,
plate
so I can
or
get
yeah.
feedback on that, make sure they're eating whole foods, etc. And I can't tell you how many times just switching from tracking everything and really trying to be in a deficit to doing that has resulted in weight loss where people
Yes.
were struggling to lose weight before. It's funny.
I feel like another great example, you've probably seen this as well, where your client goes on vacation and they come home weighing less and they're like, oh my God, I figured I probably gained all this weight on vacation because, I drank a little bit more than usual. There, I had a little bit more dessert than usual. And they actually come home weighing less. You're like, yeah, because you spent a few days not stressing about everything or like overly just anxious about your food
Yeah.
choices or tracking, every last gram of something, because there is a point of like diminishing returns for some people. If the tracking is like doing more harm than good, then obviously that defeats the purpose of tracking in the first place. It's supposed to be a helpful tool. If it's working against you, it doesn't have to be used as the tool.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily that the tool itself is the impediment sometimes.
Yeah.
Because with these people in particular, it's not that they don't like tracking or that it's stressful. It's that for some reason, I've realized as well, like some people when they track, they feel like that's the only thing they need to focus on. And so then
Mm.
they don't focus on their healthy behaviors as much.
Yep.
And it's like, well, I hit my calories, but I didn't really focus on my fruit and vegetable goal, and I didn't really hit my fiber goal. It's like, I'm kind of trying to do this. And when you eliminate the tracking, it's almost like, all right, that's one less thing to focus on. Now I can focus on these things a little bit better.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if you eat whole foods, if you eat fruits and veggies, and you focus on protein, you're going to feel satiated. You're going to eat less in general,
Yeah.
right? And I think tracking for some people can, I don't want to use the word excuse because it's not an excuse, but maybe adds a degree of flexibility that the person isn't necessarily ready for yet. Like, well,
Yeah.
I'm tracking so I could eat this chocolate
Pop
cake that's
Tarts.
500 calories and account for it. But you're
Yeah.
not thinking about the influence of those foods on your hunger and satiety regulation and
Right.
cravings.
Right. I think, the other thing that we've found really helpful is for some reason, I think that what we were seeing in our clients is that telling them, hey, you need to have this amount of fruits and vegetables per day, or this many servings of vegetables per day. If you're an adult who like doesn't particularly like many vegetables, that can sound really overwhelming or maybe daunting to be able to hit that. And so something we changed about the kind of guidelines in what we set for people is we started calling it a color count. And the goal is to shoot for 3 to 5 colors per day. And so that can be fruits or it can be vegetables. But the goal is to shoot for 3 to 5 colors per day. And by doing that, we take away the scary word of vegetable for some people. We make it sound a little bit less daunting, and it almost like, this might be a oversimplification of it, but it almost like gamifies, like, oh, I had 2 colors in my breakfast. I had 3 colors in my lunch. I can, have one more color for dinner, and I've had, 6 different colors. And what I mean by that is like, you had broccoli, that's green, that's one color. You had a banana, that's yellow, that's one color. You had blueberries, blue, one color. And so that allows people to kind of gamify things. And we know that if they're getting 5 colors in their day, they've probably had a good variety of fruits and vegetables and fiber intake and different, types of nutrients in that.
Yeah, I like that. Chocolate milk counts as brown.
I'm like, Skittles doesn't count, guys. Like M&M's doesn't count.
You got like 20 colors in there.
Yeah, you do have to clarify a little bit what you mean by color.
So let me ask you this, because it can be difficult sometimes for somebody who comes from a really restrictive background to adopt this approach of being less restrictive, being more flexible, focusing on habits rather than saying, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. What are some of the approaches that you take, or maybe even just the benefits of coaching and community that help people shift their mindset? And I intentionally bring up the word mindset because so many people think it's about giving me a better diet, right? And I can tell you some, like, I'm sure you probably have the same conversation. A potential client is inquiring about coaching, like, are you going to give me a meal plan? I need
Can
to
I
know
have a
what's
meal plan? Yep.
like, that's not going to serve you at all, right? So how do you approach that situation?
Yeah. So in the meal plan sense, the first thing that we're going to do is educate that client on why we don't give a meal plan to people. Not only is it technically out of scope if you're not a registered dietitian, but from a mindset component or from a mindset space, you're not going to eat off of a meal plan for the rest of your life. I want to teach you how you can still hit your protein and your fiber and your color goals and so on, and live your life while also being able to go to a barbecue or go celebrate a friend's wedding, or you just had a child and your nutrition is all over the place. And let's see how we can figure that out, because I could give you a meal plan and that might work for a week, and then you're going to be bored out of your mind. And you're going to be saying, well, I wonder how I can swap out, there's 4 ounces of chicken on here. I wonder if I don't want chicken, how could I swap that out? And what would be a different source that I could swap that out for? We want to teach you that. We want to teach you, how can you make those swaps? What would, if 4 ounces of chicken gives me roughly 25 grams of protein, what's another source that could give me roughly 25 grams of protein? And so there's this big mindset piece of, I know sometimes people come into a coaching process and they're like, I just want the plan. Give me the plan. Tell me what to buy, what to eat, how much to eat. Come cook it at my house for me and feed it to me, right? Because a lot of people are just like, give me the plan. Like, I can execute a plan, give me the plan. And some people might not be ready for the coaching experience because the way that we coach and the way that you coach is, no, we're going to teach you how to do this on your own. And some people are not prepared for that. Some people are not ready for that if they are in the mindset of, I just want a plan, tell me what to do. It's not that we don't want to tell you what to do. It's kind of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. Actually, I'm thinking of the wrong one. I'm thinking of you could teach a man to fish is really what I was thinking of. Like, you could teach a man to fish, but you could give him a fish, you could teach him to fish. We want to teach you to fish so that you can do this on your own. So I think that that's a really prevalent approach of ours, is just being able to teach someone what the benefit is of being able to do this on your own, and so that you can have the ability to adapt and adjust and modify no matter the stage of life you're in, no matter what events you have, no matter if it's holiday season or it's summer season or you're traveling. I think a lot of people get caught up too in trying to sign up for coaching at the perfect time, like when they don't have any events, or like people don't want to sign up through the holidays, or they don't want to sign up when it's summer because they know they'll be traveling. And I'm like, no, those are really good times to sign up, because we really get to put into practical application how to do this and how to live your life, because life is always going to be happening. Like, you're
Yeah.
always going to have to adjust your fitness and your nutrition accordingly based on what's going on in your life. So let's together teach you how to do that, where you have a coach in your corner, have the accountability, have the community of people supporting you through that, so that you can come out of this holiday season and say, oh my gosh, this is the first time I maintained my weight in the holiday season. I didn't gain 5 pounds this holiday season. So
Yeah.
let's teach you how to manage the chaos of life during your coaching.
Yeah, the whole concept of have a vacation coming up, or a trip, or
Should I
this or
wait
that,
till after? Should I
or even
wait till I
like,
come back?
or even I have vacation coming up. Can like I pause coaching for a week or two? And it's like, no, like this is something that's important to
Yeah.
practice. Right? The conversation of meal plans. I think so much of coaching is also helping guide a person to seeing things differently on their own too, right? Because usually when I have this conversation, something like, "Can I have a meal plan?" I don't answer directly. I usually ask them, I'm like, "Well, okay, if I told you what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like, is that's what you want?" They're like, "Yeah." It's like, all right, do you think you could like eat the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner forever? I'm like, no, right? Like,
Like, okay,
obviously not.
squashed.
It's
Yeah.
like, all right, well, let me ask you this. Let's say you're following your meal plan and you go to a birthday party and you can't stick to the meal plan because it's not available. Like, what would you do? I'm like, oh, I don't really know. I'm like, what if you go to a restaurant, or if you go on vacation? Again, like, I don't really know. I'm like, so do you think it would be better if you had a meal plan, or if like you just knew how to eat when you're in those situations and you didn't have to have a meal plan? They're like, oh,
Yeah.
that would be better. I'm like, all
Yeah,
right,
that
cool. Like,
sounds
that's what we're
good.
kind of doing here.
Yeah.
That's what we're kind of doing. Not like telling you what to eat. We're kind
Right.
of teaching you how to eat, right?
You're like,
And there's
okay,
a
now I can help you. Yeah.
yeah. It's like you and I, through years of experience, we can go to a birthday party and stay quote unquote on track if we
Yeah.
want. We can go on vacation and stay quote unquote on track. And I use quote unquote because staying on track like that means something different for everybody.
Yes.
Like for me, it just means enjoying myself. Don't go overboard, and like don't feel bad about it afterwards, which I never
Right.
really do. But I still make sure I get my protein in. I still try to get some veggies in if I'm on vacation, whatever. Not overdo alcohol. Like a ton of little things that help you stay relatively on track, right? But people feel a lot of stress around that when they don't have a
Mm.
very solid plan to follow in those situations. It feels really stressful. And this is what I wanted to really tackle when with the original question I asked is like, how do you get someone to be able to improve their mindset specifically if they've always have been so restrictive?
Yeah. It's challenging. I like to say that unlearning old behaviors is so much harder than learning new behaviors. Like having to unlearn before you relearn. And I would say we see that a lot in like our 50s to 60s crowd who
Mm,
grew up on, the like really the slim fast and the special K cereal and like the very low calorie this and reduced fat that, and have a very specific way of thinking of, lots and lots of cardio and not that much strength training, and very low carb diets. And it can be really challenging for people to unlearn those behaviors. But something that you kind of want to gently, in a multitude of different ways, point out is, if your current belief was working, right? And your current belief was getting you to where you wanted to be, then you wouldn't still be unhappy with where you are. And
mm,
so I like to say, like, nothing changes if nothing changes. And so if we keep doing the thing that got us to where we are and we think we know better, and so we try to do it our way, and we're still not where we want to be, then probably the course of action needs adjusting. And so something that we'll sometimes do is say, hey, we want to do things, of course, based on what you're comfortable with. And, you might say, okay, I'm not comfortable, bringing my carbohydrates up to that level because low carb is so ingrained in me. And so, we want to dig into, that fear of carb, right? A prime example is, maybe I have a client who is checking in and she's nailing her protein, she's nailing her fats, but she's constantly coming up short on carbs. And I know she knows what a carb is. I know she knows how to get her carbs. I know what her favorite carbs are. I know what her favorite snacks are. This is not an education issue of, hey, I see you coming up short on your carbs, so let me educate you on what a carb is and give you some carb ideas. This is not a person who needs carb ideas. She knows what carbs are. So there's some other mental block there of why are we hitting everything, but I notice you're coming up short on carbs. What is this related to? Where do you think that's stemming from? Because I know you know what a carb is. And then you kind of ask those deeper questions and it comes out, just low carb is so ingrained in me. And it's so hard uh, for me to recognize that I could still see progress if I'm eating that amount of carbs, because I've always been taught that high carb is, contraindicated essentially, or counterintuitive for me dieting. And so it just seems crazy to me that I could be dieting and still eat this amount of carbs. It's like, okay, cool. Let's talk about that. If this is still really hard to hit, but we need you to hit this amount of calories, we can modify things a little bit. We can maybe add a little bit more fats. We could lower that carb intake a little bit until you're a little bit more comfortable hitting that intake. And then, maybe we could add a little bit more from there. So I think kind of step one is diving into where that thought is coming from and if it is a helpful thought that actually serves us. And then B, potentially compromising or adjusting or modifying to kind of meet somewhere in the middle. Hey, I want you here. You want to be here. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. And let's just try it. Let's give it a week and see how that feels. Because I think sometimes people think like if there's this change happening or you're making an adjustment, is that how it's going to be forever? And that feels really scary. It's like, let's just try this for a week. Let's see how you feel. Let's see how your sleep is. Let's see if your satiety is any different, if your hunger levels are any different, if your energy levels are any different. And of course, the person who's always used to low carb and then they eat a bunch of carbs, they come back and they're like, I had so much energy this week. I PR'd in all of my workouts. I felt so good. I slept better. It's like, yeah, see, like we got to try some new things, but it could be really hard to unlearn those habits, especially if you're not willing to make those adjustments. And so quite frankly, the relationship that you have with your coach and the connection and the trust you have with your coach is really important because similar to what you talked about in the beginning of like Adrian coming onto the podcast and being like, why should we listen to him? Why should we listen to you? If the client doesn't trust the coach to get them to where they need to be, either the knowledge or the experience that they have, the client's not going to even feel comfortable making that shift.
Yeah, completely. And as an aside, the whole low carb thing is so funny because the research clearly shows that like higher carb diets are likely beneficial for fat loss, right? Like, and I try to be as nuanced as possible. Like, if you ask my opinion to say it is better to eat high carb, like I don't like making conclusive statements like that. But the thing is, like when people think about carbs, they're thinking about junk food, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, pizza, cake, this, that. It's like those things have more fat than carbs in the first place. And two, when we talk about carb-rich foods, potatoes, rice, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, like
Yeah.
all those things help so much with satiety. They're low-calorie foods relative to how much volume of food you get. And it's like eat more carbs; it'll help you lose fat. And that's such a
Yeah.
like counterintuitive thought for so many people. But with the concept of helping people shift their mindset, because at the end of the day that's really what's necessary, right? And you and I were talking about this concept of like how do we express the value of coaching to somebody before they've
Mm.
experienced it, and it's really difficult because most people think they need a better workout program and a better diet, and it's like that's not what you need. That can be part of something that might be helpful if what you have been doing right now like absolutely sucks. Right, like if you're doing keto because you think you can't eat any carbs, like yeah, you need a better diet plan perhaps, but that doesn't address the root cause, right? And as cliche as it sounds, like people really need to experience a shift in identity from somebody who's trying to be healthy to somebody who is healthy. And guiding somebody to do that correctly is what I think coaching is all about.
Yep.
Like people don't really think about that when they sign up for coaching a lot. Like, I want you to help me shift my mindset and become a healthier person. Like that's not what somebody signs up for, right?
Right.
They're like, I'm trying to lose 20 pounds of fat.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like that's what's necessary to help you lose the 20 pounds of fat and keep it
Right.
off. And one thing we have, you know, through my years of coaching experience, when I first started working, it was like one on one, you and I, you're my client, like our relationship is just us two and nobody else is part of this, right? And I realized for a lot of people who struggle with health and fitness, community is so
Mm.
important and so
Mm-hmm.
helpful. So more and more, we've been putting more emphasis on our community rather than just the one-on-one coaching component of our program.
Yep.
And when we even talk about our program to potential clients, like we don't say it's one-on-one coaching. Like one-on-one coaching is a component of what we do. And it's been so helpful. And so many clients say this too after they're done working with us. They're like, the community was super helpful, and I didn't even think it was going to be helpful, right?
Yeah.
Like coming to group calls and seeing what somebody else is struggling with or how they frame things helps you frame things differently. Seeing somebody who was exactly where you were just 3 months ago, and now they're
Mm.
sharing how they were able to improve, whether it's their relationship with carbs or how they view going out to eat or whatever, like it helps so much. And what's nice about this approach is that like, I say this as a joke, but it's like almost like less work on the coach's side. And it's like, you guys are really helping each other out. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't have a healthy community. That's been a game changer for
Yes.
us. Really.
Or their family and their friends may not be supportive, and their coach might feel like their coach is the only one in their corner. And so to have other people, whether it's in a group chat or a Facebook group or a team call, that are walking a similar path, it's really cool to be able to see those connections. We've had clients in the past who have met through like our group chats and our team calls, and they've gotten together and they've like gone on trips together, and like they will like tag us like, Levolution brought us together, and like that's so cool, like that you guys have actually made friends like that, and these people are a significant part of your life now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool. I agree that the community is a big part of it, and having a support circle is a really helpful part of it too.
Yeah. We inherently, whenever I have these conversations about coaching, it's always centered around nutrition a lot because I feel like that's what people tend to struggle with a lot. They're like, I have a hard time with my food intake and I
Yeah.
have cravings and this and that. But people also don't understand how important the training part is as well, right? So maybe
Yeah.
we can transition to talk a little bit about training, our general philosophies, why I'm sure you as well emphasize so much the importance of improving muscle mass and not just
Yeah.
exercise for the sake of exercising, and
Yep.
how that also contributes to it just feeling so much easier to stay in shape long term as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. My grandfather is in the hospital currently. He's okay, but he's 83, and he had to have a surgery, and he wasn't allowed to eat or drink for several days. And so this is an 83-year-old man who's now been sitting in a hospital bed for a week and hasn't been able to stand up or walk or leave his hospital bed or eat or drink. And
Mhm.
now he's at the point where he's allowed to get up and move, and he's like, I'm so weak. Like, I'm so weak. I can't stand up. I can't walk. And I went and visited him, and he's in a rehab facility now where they're doing intensive PT sessions with him 2 to 3 times a day just to get him back to a point of being able to perform his activities of daily living and like feed his dog and walk his dog and get on and off the toilet, those things that we kind of take for granted, of our muscles being able to do those things. And so he was feeling a little discouraged and a little doomed, feeling like, I'm 83 and I'm just wasting away in this bed. And what if I can't walk again? And what if I can't walk my dog again? And what if I can't this? And I said, he's like, I can't build muscle now. I'm too old. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me just stop you right there. And he went on to ask questions essentially about age-related muscle loss. And I was like, look, age-related muscle loss is a thing. Like we have heard of sarcopenia. We know that is a thing. But most of the time when the issue of muscle loss arises, it is not an issue of inherent muscle loss that's just happening to you because you're 80. It's more so an issue of disuse and not using the muscles that support your ability to move and live and put dishes away and unload a dishwasher and things like that. And so he's like, so you're telling me that I could still gain strength and muscle at 83 years old? I'm like, yes. And he like had such a encouraged mindset after that, once he learned like, no, you're going to get up and walking, and you're going to do your PT, and you're going to get stronger, and you're going to gain strength, and you're going to do this. And I have some exercises I could give you. And I gave him a bunch of exercises to do. And then he went to PT later that day, and he called me. He's like, Joelle, all the exercises that you showed me that I should be doing, that's exactly what PT had me do today. And I'm like, go figure. I've learned a thing or two about exercise.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes, a lot of people start their health and fitness journey primarily for body composition improvements. And we somewhere forget along the way how beneficial exercise and movement and specific training modalities are for life, and all cause mortality and decreased cancer risks and lower risk of diabetes or lower cholesterol levels or better blood sugar stability and, better insulin sensitivity. And we forget about those invisible benefits of exercise. We think, oh, I'm going to get fit and I want, nice glutes and I want cap delts and big biceps if you're a guy, or I mean, I want big biceps too. Anyway, and I think sometimes we forget or we get easily discouraged, and maybe we're working out and we're like, I'm still not seeing the progress I want to see. What's the point?
Yeah.
And it's like, the point is your health. The point is your 83-year-old self is going to be really glad one day that you have the muscle mass that you do. And it's really important to start building that. And it's never, ever, ever too late to start that. But I'm so adamant about strength training being a part of people's routine, because muscle is the most protective insurance policy that you could ever give yourself.
Yeah, and you know what's cool? I don't know if you've experienced this too. So surprisingly, a lot of people that reach out to us are like in their 60s.
Yeah,
We actually have a lot of clients who are older, and when they reach out, they're like, "I want to build muscle and get strong."
I love
And I
that.
feel like this probably wasn't a common thing amongst
Yeah,
older populations prior, right? But maybe it's because they come from the background of so much cardio, trying to be thinner, and now strength training is so prevalent. And
I love
I
that.
didn't even know 60 and 70-year-olds were on social media, but I guess they're on there. They're on Instagram. They're finding me somewhere, and they see the importance of building muscle, right? And they're like, I want to be able to play with my grandkids, and I want to have energy, and all of these things. So
Yes.
it's really cool to see how prevalent strength training is nowadays, compared to before, right? And what you mentioned about invisible benefits, it's like people really don't understand how beneficial building muscle is for things like blood sugar regulation, cardiovascular health,
Yep.
mental health, all of those things. We've had a number of clients who were or are still on weight loss medications, Ozempic, etc. And their doctor obviously told them they need to lose weight. And they were going to weight loss clinics. And unfortunately, the advice that they were getting weight loss clinics felt really overwhelming. I'm thinking of one client in particular, Priscilla. If you're listening to this, shout out to Priscilla. She's awesome. Um, she was going to weight loss clinics, and she was like, they were telling me to do all the things that you were telling me to do. It just felt really overwhelming, and I didn't have support, right?
Mm.
And she's been able to really improve the quality of her nutrition. But the big piece for her was really the strength training. She never strength trained before. And she literally was like, I could barely lift up 10 pounds and do a press. And now I'm holding a 30-pound dumbbell.
I love
But the
that.
cool thing is, she's been able to completely come off of blood sugar medication, which
Awesome.
for her, she thought she was going to be on for the rest of her life. And her blood sugar was just continuously moving in the wrong direction. And a combination of weight loss helps with blood sugar regulation, but also building muscle. People don't understand that muscle is probably the most protective organ against having type 2
Yeah.
diabetes, because it helps you reduce blood sugar. So it's I want to emphasize this point a ton, because people really don't understand how beneficial muscle mass is for health, and it's not just about looking better.
Yeah. Yeah, I had done a podcast a while back on the benefits of muscle, and I pulled all these really cool stats on, increased survival after, surgery, or faster recovery post surgery, and better breast cancer recovery rates, and better COPD outcomes, and better respiratory infection outcomes. And it was wild to really see, a lot of those health related issues or diseases or outcomes that were changed or dictated by how much muscle or strength someone had. I think about my own dad. He's 61, and he started lifting in his 30s. And like, you look at my dad and you're like, he's a jacked 60-year-old bodybuilder. Like, I grew up with him being a bodybuilder. Like, I went to his shows. And now in his 60s, like, he trains 5 days a week. He lifts weights 5 days a week, does a few days a week of cardio. He looks fantastic at 61. And he's had his fair share of injuries and surgeries, but his recoveries, like, he's had spinal fusion surgery. You get out of that surgery, you can't walk. But his recoveries have been so much quicker, and his outcomes have been so much better compared to someone who does not have the muscle or strength that he
Yeah.
has.
Yeah. And this also ties into like my motivating factor, for example, is like being able to play with my kids,
Yep.
right? And eventually my grandkids, something I don't even think about anymore, but having young kids, like I want to be able to play with them. And we're talking about health benefits like blood sugar, etc. But even just physical function, being able to move without pain, throw
Yeah.
your kids around, right? My wife and I, we joke about this, but it's not funny. Like, we realize now, being young parents, how many young parents are out of shape, right? And that's not to discriminate in any way, but like, man, we started taking our 2 year old to like soccer classes, and they encourage the parents to like play with the kids.
Mm.
And I'm literally the only dad running around kicking the ball. There's like
Uh,
10, 15 kids there. A lot of dads are just sitting around and stuff. And I'm
Sitting.
like, well, it's cool, like, that I can do this and I want to be able to do this. But it's hard to understand why that's not like a wake up call for more people. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that that example is multifaceted too, because there's probably a lot of parents who also put their kids in a sport or activity because it's an hour for them to just sit and chill and their
Sure,
child
sure,
is
sure.
entertained, right? So there's that aspect too of like, you take a working parent who's also trying to do right by their kid and they're also trying to put their kid in
Yeah,
an activity. And like, this is the 1 hour where they could just kind of like sit and watch their kid play. But then you're also like, it's interesting to me that they're asking like, hey, parents, please come be involved in this. And they're like, nope.
yeah,
That part is interesting to me.
yeah. Yeah,
Is it
I don't know.
I don't want to or I am unable to, because those are two
Sure,
very
sure.
different
Yeah,
things.
they are two very different things.
But
I
we
guess,
I think I mentioned this to you the other day when we were trying to get scheduled. Our whole family just had the flu. And 3-year-old brought it home from preschool, baby got it, I got it, husband got it. I was worse off than anyone. I don't know what happened, but I just got the shit end of the stick. And recovering from that, I mean, we're 3.5 weeks post, onset. And I am still so breathy, like out of breath and shortness of breath. There's just like some fatigue there that's still lingering. And like my cardiorespiratory health, I could tell is just still not where it was previously. And I was running around the house with my daughters yesterday and I was like, hold on, mommy's got to like stop and take a breath. And I'm like, oh my gosh, in 3.5 years of having my two girls, I don't think I've ever had to say,
yeah,
hold on, mommy's got to stop for a minute and catch her breath. But I was so winded. And you have that reflection moment of like, is that how people feel all the time? Like, I feel like this
yeah,
post flu, and I know it's because of the flu, and I'm slowly getting back into my training and working, my cardiorespiratory health back up and my strength training and my weights back up. But I can't imagine feeling like that all the time or having to say, mommy can't do that. Mommy can't get up and down from the floor with you. Mommy can't chase you around. I love nothing more than when I'm like carrying two babies, one in each hand, and my 3-year-old looks at me, Mom, you're so strong. I'm like, yeah, I
it's
am.
cool. Yeah,
And she'll be like, it's from all the exercise you do. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
yeah, yeah. That's what
So
I'm saying. Like, I don't understand how that's not a wake up call for more
yeah,
people, right? And I think maybe our perspective is skewed too, because similar to yourself, since you just mentioned about your dad, like, I grew up in a household where both my parents cared about fitness and like they always worked out. So it was like something that's always been part of my
yeah,
life. I've been overweight when I was younger, but I have always been really active, right? And cared about being physically active and playing basketball and lifting weights and all this stuff. And it's difficult to understand how physical activity is not part of somebody's life at all. And that is so prevalent.
yeah, yeah. Look, I think we've heard the term generational wealth a lot, right? And then you think about generational health, and you're like, why aren't people talking about generational health too? And you know, you and I have that in common where we grew up in a household where like our parents were avid gym goers. And so
Mhm.
that was our normal. But that's not people's normals. And like our kids are going to grow up with that being normal. Mom and dad go to the gym. Like I'll walk in from the gym and my husband will get my daughter up and Mom, were you exercising when I was sleeping? Like she knows that's what I do. Yeah, mommy goes and exercises before you wake up so that I could do something for myself in the morning before I got to take care of everyone else and everything else the rest of the day. And so, that will be normal for her. And she, I usually go to the gym, but we have a little home gym in our basement as well. And my husband works out at home. And so like they will sometimes see us exercise and like get curious and they want to touch the equipment. I'm like, sure, lift that. You could do that. You could lift that up. You're strong enough to do that. And that's normal for them. And so I think that yes, generational wealth is important, but I think that we could be talking more about generational health. And I don't just mean genetically what you're passing down to your kids, but habitually what you're passing down to your kids.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is anytime I leave the house, my son goes, "Papa, where are you going? Are you going to the gym?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to the gym. I'm gonna go to the store." But it's funny. And anytime I come home from anywhere, he's like, "Did you go to the
Did you
gym?"
go to the gym? He's like your little accountability buddy.
Yeah,
My
and
my
I'll show him little like videos on Instagram and stuff, and he gets so excited.
That's
It's
so funny.
adorable.
My daughter recently, they were in preschool building out like a map of their community. And so they were talking about, the teacher was asking the kids, what's in your community? Your school is in your community, the library is in your community. Where else do your mommies and daddies go? And Sloane's like, the gym. She's like,
That's
where
awesome.
else? Sloan was basically like, I don't know. My mom only goes to the gym. She doesn't leave the house other than the gym.
Yeah, this leads into another topic that I really like talking about, and I know we have just a couple minutes left, so we could wrap this up. But it's, oftentimes parents or people who are busy in general feel like they don't have time, right?
Mm,
And I'm sure you and I have a similar lifestyle where it's like family, work, gym, pretty much nothing else.
yep.
I might hang out with a friend like once a month, and it'll be for like an hour.
Yeah.
And that's really boring to a lot of people.
Yep.
And quite honestly, yeah, it kind of is boring, right? Uh, but I think so many times people don't even think about what their real priorities are.
Mm,
And so they spend time doing all of these alternative things, which provide maybe short term enjoyment and short term happiness at the expense of like long term discomfort,
yep.
right? Because like deep down, they do want to be healthy and they do care about not having diabetes and not dying young and being able to play with their kids and their grandkids. Yet they really feel like they don't have time. And the truth is that they're not prioritizing their time effectively. I was actually going on a walk this morning and thinking about a podcast episode and like title it something like being in shape is boring or like being healthy is boring and talking about this concept. But it's like you don't really have a ton of time for everything in life, at least not all at once, and it's
Yeah.
seasonal. And for me, like family, business, and health are never not going to be a priority. And
Right.
at the moment, like that's really all I can focus on. And
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing to have a conversation about, even with potential clients sometimes, because it's like they like going and doing this thing on the weekend and spending time doing this during the week. It's like you and I talk about not restricting diet and not cutting things out of your like not cutting things that you like to eat out of your diet altogether. But sometimes it is necessary to reevaluate the things you do with your life and cut out things that aren't productive.
Yeah, I think on that topic alcohol comes up a lot with clients
Oh
where
my
that's a huge priority shift that I think sometimes like accidentally happens during the coaching experience. Like we're not going to tell you you can't, but if you are doing your daily check-in and you got to report how many alcoholic drinks you had that day and you get to your weekly check-in and realized 3 alcoholic drinks this day, 2 alcoholic drinks this day, 3 drinks this day, 1 drink this day, 2 drinks this day, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't realize how much alcohol I was having." When you start digging into that, is that alone? Is that out with friends? Is that at a party? Is that socially drinking? Is that when the kids go to bed? And I think that ends up being this like accidental byproduct where people kind of start to reduce that intake because they realize either it's not making me feel great or it's affecting my sleep or it affects, next day I feel crappy and now I can't get my workout in. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, if you are trying to change a habit or add a new habit, a lot of times it means replacing an old habit.
Yeah.
And, I think we're in a unique position where we've been doing this so long and it's so ingrained in us as adults, even from a young age, that it doesn't seem, I don't want to say it's not hard for us, but it's so habitual for us and it's second nature to us, like brushing our teeth, that we will fit it into our schedule, whether it's at 5 a.m. or after the kids go to bed or when they're napping. We have learned how to adapt and modify, but still fit it in, even if it means a 20-minute session instead of an hour session. We are
Yeah.
able to take that something is better than nothing approach. And I think people get really overwhelmed by feeling like it has to get done perfectly. And so, I have a crazy schedule today. If I can't fit in an hour-long workout, then I'm just going to skip it. And it's like, you could still benefit from 20 minutes of movement or a 15-minute walk outside, but doing something is always going to be better than nothing. And I think people kind of get this analysis, paralysis by analysis, where they are overthinking so much, or they think that it has to be perfect, that they're shooting for optimal and ideal instead of what's practical for them in that moment or that day.
Yeah. I will actually say that, at least for me personally, it's not hard, right? Like, hard, I think, is the wrong word, because I think one of the main reasons why both you and I probably prioritize the fitness stuff so much is because we see how it positively impacts every other aspect of our life. It makes other aspects of our life easier, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I don't eat well, I
You don't
don't
feel
feel
good.
good. If I don't exercise, don't sleep while drinking, like, it sucks, right? So I do that on purpose so that everything else feels easier. I'm happy that you brought up alcohol, because I also grew up in a household. I grew up not just really close with my parents, but like I lived by my cousins and stuff. So nobody in my family was really a drinker. Like, they would drink at special occasions if there was a party and stuff. So they weren't anti-drinking. Just like, people didn't really drink from day to day, and I never understood how normal it is
Hmm.
for people to drink like every day,
Yeah.
right? Even if it's like a beer or two or like some wine as a stress reliever. That was something that was honestly a complete eye opener. Um, when my wife and I started dating and I started meeting like her family and other people, like, nothing against them, but like, people just
Drink
drink
more.
regularly.
Yeah.
And it's so, it's such a big impediment on like the health and fitness thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
man, if you get off work at 5 and your immediate behavior is to like have 2 glasses of wine, like, you're not going to do much else after that. You're
Yeah.
not really going to go on a walk and be healthy, and like, you're not going to eat healthy, and that's probably like 300 calories right
No.
there. And it's like, it's such a bad behavior. But when you do it every day, like, how do you break it? You know, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, look, there's so much to it. Like, are we drinking to take the edge off? Is this a like, if you're drinking every day, it's likely a coping strategy for you because you're not socially drinking every day. I mean, I doubt you're socially drinking every day. And so if we're sitting home alone and drinking every day, now it's become okay, I need to take the edge off, or I had a stressful day, and now we're using that as a coping strategy. And then really what that is self-medicating. And so now we're using a toxic substance to self-medicate to escape from the reality of what we're currently feeling. Like, there's so many aspects to it. I know recently in the last few weeks, of at least of the time of us recording this, this Surgeon General's change came out about a warning label being on alcohol, and that was like a big thing. It got people talking more about alcohol. And I remember Dr. Joe actually making this post where he showed the stats of how many people believe, they like polled Americans, I think, on how many people knew that alcohol was cancer causing. And to me, I thought it was like everyone knew it was like cigarettes, like alcohol causes cancer, just like cigarettes. And it was something like 60 or 70% of people didn't know. And I'm like, wait a minute. People don't know that alcohol is bad for them. And that's where, like, you and I live in this bubble of health and fitness where sometimes what we're seeing is what we think is like widespread. We see our peers talking about things and you're like, oh yeah, obviously people know that. And it was a really big wake up call for me as like just as a coach in the space of like, oh, people actually don't know this. And then that to me means we need to be talking more about this, because the fact that 50, 60, whatever the percentage was, don't hold me to it, it was a high number. The fact that that many people were entirely unaware that there are health and carcinogenic consequences of alcohol, I was baffled.
Yeah.
Baffled.
Yeah. Last story I'll tell here, and we could wrap this up. It paints the picture, and also the idea that like people hyperfixate on small little things that don't really have any role, like when it
Mm,
comes to health, and then they do like things that are actually unhealthy and they try to justify it. So we were at a family party. I'm talking to my wife's aunt, and they're social drinkers. Like, they drink really frequently, right? Like, multiple times per week, multiple drinks. And she follows Bobby Parrish. Do you know Bobby
yep.
Parrish? Yep. And she really likes his app. She's telling me about his app, and she's like, I cut out all these things because they have all these harmful chemicals. And like, something about my personality, when I really know you and I like you, I'm like super sarcastic, and I like I'm witty and I like making jokes a lot,
Yeah.
right? So instead of like trying to educate you on why it's not bad, and I was like, what about the wine
The
you're drinking?
wine. Yeah.
And she was like, oh, like, this isn't bad. And I'm like, it's way worse than the chemicals that you're talking about. She's like, no, 1 or 2 drinks, like, it's not bad. It's good for you. And I'm like, it's so funny how people try to justify
Yes.
what fits what they're trying to do, and even though there's so much evidence to show that it's
Yep.
bad for you,
And this
right?
is I'll wrap here too. Like this could be a
Yeah,
whole different podcast. I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcast already, but to me, alcohol is one of those big rocks. And so if you are stressing about seed oils or the food dye in Fruit
yeah,
Loops, you are missing the forest for the trees if you are drinking regularly. Like that is a big rock. And if you are not worried about sleep, stress, alcohol, movement, training, but you are stressed about the food dyes and the seed oils, like we're stepping over dollars for pennies.
it's organic wine though.
That's the kicker.
All right, Joelle, it's been a
Uh,
pleasure having you on. Do you mind sharing with the audience where they can learn more from you and where they can find you?
yeah, absolutely. I am mainly on Instagram. I just don't feel like I'm cool enough for TikTok these days, but you can find me on Instagram at Joelle Samantha.
Awesome. And share your website too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, level. So it's levolutioncoaching.com, but it's LVLTN is just kind of shortened version.
Yeah, and for those of you guys listening, all the links will be down in the description as always. Joelle, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Sorry we didn't talk about blood flow
Yeah,
restriction.
I came prepared, so I'll just have to come back to talk about BFR.
We can do it again. I am very scattered. Like, this happens all the time with
That's
guests, and
so
I'm like, I
funny.
wonder if they hate that I made them waste time on preparing, but
No, that's
it is
okay.
what it is.
Yeah, no, it was great to talk to you, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. For those of you guys tuning in, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, if you're a regular listener, if you could take a second to rate and review the podcast, it would help a ton. And if you found it valuable, share it with somebody that you love because it would help us as well. I'll catch you guys in next week's episode. Peace.